Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am so glad you're here today because we are getting into something that, honestly, I think literally everyone listening to this has dealt with at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a universal human experience.
Yeah, exactly. And today we are unpacking a really fascinating document. It's titled Perceived Isolation, a Deep Analysis. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out the causes, the real-world impacts, and most importantly, the psychological pathways out of this feeling that you are just entirely alone in the world.
Right. And it's a tricky topic because, we tend to think of isolation as just a physical thing, like how many people are in the room with you.
Okay, let's unpack this because the source points out a really wild paradox here. I want you to picture your smartphone for a second. You glance up at the corner of the screen and you see those beautiful, solid 4 bars of Wi-Fi.
The ultimate comfort.
Right. The interface is screaming at you like you are connected. You have maximum signal, but then you try to load a web page and nothing. The loading bar just hangs there.
It just spins and spins.
Yeah, exactly. The data isn't flowing.
Yeah.
You have all the visible markers of being plugged in, but you are utterly offline. And that's what the source is getting at. You can be surrounded by people like literally shoulder to shoulder on a subway or at a dinner party and still lack the signal.
Which is such a powerful analogy because the document defines the state as a subjective reality. And we are basically going to use this text as a psychological roadmap today, right? We're going to dissect exactly how this subjective reality is built inside the brain and then how we can actually dismantle it.
So let's start right there at the foundation, section 1 of our deep dive. The document asks, what is perceived isolation? And the main takeaway is that it's the internal emotional experience of feeling disconnected.
Yes, it's not the physical parameters.
Yeah.
For instance, you could have 2 people in the exact same physical situation. Say they're both sitting alone in their apartments on a Friday night.
Right.
Person A might experience that as deeply rejuvenating. They make a cup of tea, they read, and their subjective reality is total comfort. But person B, in that exact same physical space, feels this suffocating weight. They feel forgotten.
So the physics of the room are identical, but the reality is entirely different.
Exactly. The isolation isn't in the room. It's constructed by the brain.
But wait, let me push back on that a bit. Because if it's a subjective reality, if it's, constructed by the brain, doesn't that mean it's just all in our heads and therefore not real?
I mean, that is the trap so many people fall into. We hear subjective and we think fake.
Right, like it's just an opinion.
Yeah, but just because a reality is subjective doesn't mean it lacks real-world consequences. The human brain, it doesn't really draw a hard line between a perceived emotional threat and an objective physical reality.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it reacts the same way. If your subjective reality tells you that you are alone and vulnerable, your brain reacts as if that is an undeniable fact of the physical universe. It triggers a massive biological cascade.
Okay, so it's like, if I wake up in the middle of the night and see a pile of laundry in the corner and think it's an intruder,
Perfect example.
my heart rate still spikes to like 130. I'm sweating. My body doesn't care that it's objectively just my dirty shirts.
Exactly. The adrenaline is real, the physiological reaction is real, and this actually sets up the severe physical impacts we'll talk about later.
Okay, so if this isolation is an internally constructed reality, we have to ask the obvious question, who or what constructed it? Which brings us to the second part of our deep dive, the roots of disconnection, the causes.
And the source material starts at the very beginning of human development here. It lists early attachment styles as the primary foundational cause.
Right, so we're talking about like our childhoods.
Yeah, the early bonds we form with our caregivers, those bonds literally build the internal architecture for how we interact with the world as adults.
Wait, so the document directly links what happened to us in a crib to why we feel lonely at age 30.
It does. Psychologists often call these internal working models. If your caregiver responded consistently when you cried, with warmth, and attention, your brain encoded a rule. The world is safe, people are reliable.
That's a secure attachment.
Exactly. But if the environment was inconsistent or maybe neglectful, the infant's brain encodes a very different rule. It says, reaching out for connection is dangerous. People cannot be relied upon.
So the foundation of connection was poured with this really shaky concrete.
Yeah.
And then any relationship you try to build on top of it decades later is just, it's going to feel like it's swaying in the wind.
That's exactly it. You could be an adult with a loving spouse and great friends, but your internal working model is constantly whispering, they aren't really there for you, they'll leave. You assume the room is empty, even when it's full.
Man, That is heavy.
Hmm.
But it completely makes sense. But we don't just passively experience this, right? The text talks about social anxiety and the fear of rejection. We actually maintain our own isolation.
We do, and we build some pretty intense defenses to do it.
Yeah, the analogy that comes to mind is like, imagine a medieval king who is so terrified of invaders that he builds this massive fortress. He digs a giant moat, builds an 80-foot wall, pulls up the drawbridge.
A completely impenetrable defense.
Right. And he succeeds. No one can get in to hurt him. But he's also locked himself inside. No food can get in. So he's safe from the sword, but he's starving to death in a prison of his own making.
What's fascinating here is the cruel irony of that exact mechanism. The psychological mechanism of anxiety is designed to protect us from pain. And to the brain, social rejection registers almost identically to physical tissue damage.
Wait, really? Like getting dumped hurts the same as breaking an arm to the brain?
Neurobiologically speaking, yes. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex lights up in both scenarios. Your nervous system wants to avoid that pain at all costs.
So the brain just says, hey, if I don't go to the party, I can't be judged. I'll just pull up the drawbridge.
Exactly. You avoid the sharp, acute pain of immediate rejection. But by doing that, you guarantee the chronic, slow starvation of isolation. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow. You fear people won't like you, so you avoid them, which leaves you with no friends, which just proves to your brain that nobody wants you around.
It's a closed, toxic loop.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here, because someone listening might say, but I'm not in a fortress. I have social media. I message people all day. Technology connects us more than ever.
And that is the modern illusion, isn't it? The source explicitly differentiates between the volume of connections and the depth of those connections.
Right.
Technology provides what the text translates as surface-level happiness.
Yeah.
But it completely lacks the biological cues our nervous systems need to feel safe. We're interacting through screens that strip away tone, microexpressions, eye contact, all the things our vagus nerve relies on.
So getting 100 likes on a post gives you like a quick hit of dopamine, but it doesn't give you actual emotional nutrition.
Exactly. It's a psychological equivalent of empty calories.
Like eating a giant bag of marshmallows when you're starving.
Yes. It tastes good for a second, your blood sugar spikes, but you are still fundamentally starving. You get the dopamine hit of anticipation, but you don't get the oxytocin release that comes from true human bonding.
Which just leaves you craving more, endlessly scrolling while you're literally wasting away inside. Okay, so we've got these three causes: the childhood blueprints, the fortress of fearful isolation, and these empty digital calories. That is a deeply toxic mental diet.
It really is.
Which brings us to section 3. What actually happens to a person's system when they consume this diet for too long? Because the document says the brain begins to perceive everything as a threat.
Right. And to understand this, we have to look back at our evolution. For most of human history, being physically separated from the tribe meant certain death. We don't have sharp claws or thick armor.
We just had each other.
Exactly. The tribe was our only survival mechanism. So loneliness evolved as a biological alarm bell, much like hunger. It's your brain screaming, get back to the group or you will die.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because in the modern world, you're sitting safe in your apartment. There are no saber-toothed tigers outside. But your subjective reality is telling your brain you are completely alone.
And the primitive brain cannot tell the difference. It hears isolation and it pulls the fire alarm. Your entire system goes into a state of hyper-vigilance.
It's like having a smoke detector that's supposed to warn you about a raging house fire. But suddenly it's blaring at max volume every single time you just try to make toast.
That is a perfect way to describe the HPA axis activation. When your brain perceives the threat of isolation, it floods your body with stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, you are bracing for an attack that is never actually coming.
Which means every neutral interaction suddenly looks like a threat. Right.
Yeah.
A text from your boss isn't just a text, it's a threat to your survival.
Yes, your amygdala hijacks your rational thought processes. You view the world through a lens of suspicion. And over time, this chronic exposure to cortisol has devastating physical tolls, which the text explicitly lists.
Right, let's get into the physical toll. The text mentions sleep issues, lowered immunity, and a lack of focus. How does feeling lonely destroy our sleep?
Well, think about it. How can your brain allow you to fall into a deep, vulnerable, slow-wave sleep if it believes you are alone on the savannah surrounded by predators?
Oh, wow. It won't let you turn off the radar.
Exactly. Your sleep becomes shallow and fragmented, and without deep sleep, your body's physical defenses crumble.
And the immunity part is wild, too. Doesn't the body actually change how it expresses genes when it feels lonely?
Yes, the concerned transcriptional response to adversity. It's a biological mechanism where the body anticipates being wounded by a predator, so it ramps up inflammation and turns down your antiviral defenses.
So feeling lonely literally makes you more likely to catch a cold.
Yes. And it increases chronic inflammation, which damages your heart. And then, with a brain starved of sleep, flooded with cortisol, and managing inflammation, your cognitive focus completely flatlines.
I really want to pause and talk directly to you, the listener, for a second. Because if you have ever found yourself staring at a spreadsheet at work or trying to read an email, and you just cannot concentrate while you're dealing with intense loneliness, the source is validating you right here.
It is entirely physiological.
Yeah, it's not a lack of willpower. It's not you being lazy. Your brain is literally stuck in survival mode. You can't do spreadsheet math when your brain thinks a tiger is in the room.
You simply don't have the metabolic energy available for higher order thinking.
Okay, so this sounds incredibly grim. We've got a self-perpetuating loop of fear, sleep deprivation, and physical breakdown.
It does sound bleak, but this is where the text pivots because psychology offers a way to rewire the system.
Yes. Section 4, the rewiring process. How do we dismantle the fortress? The source's first solution is something called gradual exposure, starting with very small social interactions.
Right, systematic desensitization. Because we know the brain learns through fear extinction.
I always think of this like physical therapy for a broken muscle or a shattered leg. You don't take a cast off a broken leg and tell the person to run a marathon.
Right. The bone would snap immediately.
Exactly. You start by just wiggling your toes. You don't try to cure your isolation by hosting a dinner party for 20 people. You just make small talk with the barista.
Because if you try to host that dinner party, the perceived threat is too high. Your nervous system overloads, you panic, and you build the fortress walls even thicker.
Right. So why does talking to the barista work? How does that fix the deep neurological trauma?
It works because your isolated brain is predicting pain. It expects every social interaction to end in rejection. When you have a tiny zero-stakes interaction with a barista and you survive unscathed, your brain logs a prediction error.
Oh, it realizes it was wrong.
Exactly. It slowly learns that the alarm was false. Accumulate enough of those micro-interactions, and you systemically dismantle the false alarms. You teach the brain that the world is safer than it thinks.
Wiggle the toes until the leg can bear weight. I love that. But that's just the outward behavior. What about the inside? The text talks about cognitive reframing.
Yeah.
Because you have all these negative thoughts just running on a loop.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, remember Section 1. Isolation is a subjective reality built on negative assumptions. They don't want me around. I'm unlovable.
And you can't just tell someone, hey, stop thinking that. That never works.
Never. The neural pathways are too entrenched. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Cognitive reframing is the tool used to manually edit that subjective reality.
So how do you actually do that manually?
You have to act as a defense attorney against your own inner critic. You don't try to suppress the thought. When the thought says, my friend didn't text back, they hate me, you put that thought on the witness stand.
You demand evidence.
Yes. You ask, what is the empirical evidence that they hate me? Is it possible they're just busy? By actively challenging the thought, you create cognitive friction. Over time, demanding evidence becomes the new default pathway.
You literally rewrite the software. That's incredible. Okay, so we have gradual exposure, cognitive reframing, and the final solution in the text is active service, helping others.
This is perhaps the most profound point in the entire document.
It is, but I have a major question here. Why on earth does helping someone else fix your internal feeling of isolation? If I am the one starving for connection, why is the prescription to go feed someone else?
It feels completely counterintuitive, but it relies on a brilliant neurobiological hack. When you are isolated and anxious, your brain's default mode network, the DMN, is stuck in overdrive.
That's the part of the brain that makes us obsess over ourselves.
Right, exactly. Self-referential thought. How do we look? Did I sound stupid? Active service forces your cognitive focus entirely outward. When you are volunteering or helping a neighbor, you are focused on their needs.
So it bypasses the social anxiety because you aren't thinking about yourself at all.
Yes. It is an immediate circuit breaker for the DMN. And furthermore, it cuts through the surface-level happiness of technology. Helping someone in the real world forces genuine connection.
You can't fake helping someone carry groceries. It's visceral.
And the brain rewards that visceral action with oxytocin, which directly counteracts cortisol. By becoming valuable to someone else, you instantly anchor yourself to the community. You generate an immediate sense of belonging.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together for everyone listening. The source shows us that perceived isolation is fundamentally a trick of the mind. It's a subjective reality born from early habits, reinforced by our anxiety, and fed by shallow tech connections.
A trick with very real physiological consequences.
Right. It puts our brains into this massive physical threat state, ruining our sleep, our focus, our immunity. But, and this is the hopeful part, through gradual steps, challenging our inner critic and serving others, we can literally rewire our minds back to belonging.
And that emphasis on active service creating belonging leaves us with a really provocative final thought to consider.
Oh, I like where this is going. What is it?
Well, we spend so much time searching for a sense of belonging, right? Waiting to find our group. But if the ultimate cure to this subjective isolation is helping others, it makes you wonder,
Wonder what?
is true belonging actually something we can ever find by looking for it? Or is it strictly something we manifest by giving it away to someone else?
Man, that is a powerful question. Are we just waiting for a signal, or do we have to become the router for someone else? I want you, the listener, to take that thought with you into your daily life this week. Look for those small moments to lower the drawbridge. We will see you on the next Deep Dive.